I'm Paul Williams, and you're listening to The World is Wrong.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about the Indian Runner.
Welcome to The World is Wrong, an extremely positive podcast where we celebrate films and film artists the world is wrong about. I am one of your hosts, and my name is Andras Jones.
And I'm one of your hosts, and my name is Brian Connolly.
And yes, we are here to talk about Sean Penn's writing and directorial debut, The Indian Runner, based upon the Bruce Springsteen song from the album Nebraska. And have you seen this film before, Brian?
Nope, this is a first time viewing.
Well, I'm so
didn't know what I was getting into.
I am so curious to know what you think about it, but I guess why don't we play a clip first, and then I'll tell you my take, and then we'll get into what you think about it.
Wonderful.
Okay.
There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers.
Hey, Pop should have been an Indian runner. This place looked better when I had it. I'll bet it did. You know why? Because you had the fire in you. People got it now don't even live on the land they're working. Ain't got no fire. Never had it. Fire? Fire's out now. So what? Between the cradle and now, you happen. You burn, brother. What do I have to show for it? What you got, Farmer Joe, is knowing you once was. On fire. Shit. Man. I burned. Land was churned. I burned. Soul was turned. I burned. I took what you earned. Lesson learned. Meeting adjourned.
The Indian Runner from 1991 is the debut feature as a writer and director from Sean Penn, based upon the Bruce Springsteen song Highway Patrolman from his album Nebraska. The film never features the song, but it does stick fairly closely to the story it tells of Joe Roberts, the titular highway patrolman, and his troublemaking brother Frankie. The film takes place in the late 1960s when Frankie, played by a young Viggo Mortensen, returns home from Vietnam. Joe, played by David Morse, who stayed behind to work his farm, has lost the farm and is now working as a cop and raising his young son with his Mexican wife, played by Valeria Golino. Over the course of the film, we see Morse's Joe doing his best to help his brother, whose PTSD seems to have exacerbated his already wild and violent nature. When Frankie moves back home with his pregnant girlfriend, played by Patricia Arquette, it looks like he's getting his shit together, but the peace never lasts. And whether he is being abusive to Arquette or exploding in violence on the patrons of his local bar, Frankie seems determined to blow up his life. As in the song, Joe tries to shield his brother from the impact of his actions, but when Frankie kills a bartender, played by Dennis Hopper, it leads to the film's finale with Joe chasing Frankie to the state line, only to stop and watch his taillights disappear. And that's The Indian Runner.
So, how is the world wrong about this movie?
Well, this is another one where I feel like it got generally good reviews at the time, but I don't think most people saw it, and I don't ever really hear people talk about it. And to me, it is. I mean, I've seen 3 out of 4 of Sean Penn's the films that he's directed. I think it's 4, but this is definitely my favorite, and I just feel like it is such a unique film in terms of the performances, in terms of its origin. When I saw it at the time, it blew me away. I actually have a story. I was at the screening of The Prom, the film I did with Steven Schoenberg. I was doing what I usually do when my film is showing, which is hanging out in the lobby, because I don't like watching myself. And I was hanging out there, and there were some people who I guess were some, Hollywood agency producer types, these 2 women, and we were talking, and I was mentioning the Indian Runner and saying how much I liked it. And they're like, wow, you should really talk to Sean because you're like the only one. So I just feel like maybe that speaks to the way the industry saw the film.
Yeah.
But I think it's really, really special and very exciting. And at the end, he dedicates the film to Hal Ashby, Frank Bianco, and John Cassavetes. And Frank Bianco, I looked up, he was a makeup artist on the film, and it was his last film, so I assume he passed away on the film, which is why he's getting that credit. But the thank you to Hal Ashby and John Cassavetes, I feel like that's a clue to appreciating this film, because it really does live in a place that both of those directors lived, and that's not easy to do. So yeah, that's how I think the world is kind of wrong about this film. Yeah.
I know it was a hard movie to find. Like at Vulcan, I believe we had just like a bootleg of it taped off of a Japanese laser disc or something like that. I'm not sure if it's had an official release since then, but that was the version we had. Was like a strange sort of unofficial one. And then the only way you can find it right now was on Canopy. I had it on, like, you can get it on Canopy, the great library website. But it's funny, I at work last night, I was telling people, I'm going to watch The Indian Runner, and nobody seemed happy about that. Like, the one guy was like, I tried to watch it. It was just too slow. I just couldn't get into it. It just was like nothing was happening. And I was like, okay, well, I'm watching it anyways. So...
did you ask that guy what he thinks about John Cassavetes films?
It's just a bunch of people talking. I don't understand. And I really did like this movie quite a bit. Though I wouldn't recommend watching it first thing when you wake up, which is what I did today. Started the day with this very depressing, bleak film. And I didn't know going into it that it was based on that Springsteen song, which I really like that song, and I really like the album of Nebraska. And it really does follow the song. If you like the song, and I before watching the movie, I listened to the song a few times, read the lyrics just to get in the right headspace. And I'm excited to kind of talk through this movie.
Yeah, have you seen any of Sean Penn's the other films that he's directed?
No, I've not seen any of them. So now he did the 2 with Jack Nicholson, The Crossing Guard and The Pledge, and then he did Into the Wild, which I read the book but never saw the movie, and then he had a movie last year called Flag Day, I think, and I didn't see that one either. So definitely.
And then there's one from 2016 called The Last Face with Javier Bardem and Charlize Theron.
Never even heard of that movie.
Un film de Sean Penn. So I think he made it in France.
Well, yeah. And I appreciate a filmmaker that's an actor who makes a movie and doesn't put themselves in it. Like, that's And it's a nice choice. I think that's definitely. I mean, I read that Sean Penn said that he went at the time he was going to quit acting and just direct, and that was sort of his mindset when making this movie. So I guess that would explain maybe why he's not in it. And also, I just feel like when you're directing your first movie, you want to put all your effort into directing it, especially since Sean Penn seems like an intense guy. That I imagine it would have been hard for him to act and direct. And I don't think he's in any of his movies he directed, I think. Is that right? Maybe he's in Into the Wild?
I don't believe so, yeah.
But, like, yeah. But, yeah, what a debut film. Like, for someone who never even made a short film before, this is pretty darn good for going right out the gate.
Yeah. $7 million budget, made $191,000 at the box office.
That might explain why the women in the lobby said you should tell poor Sean that you liked this movie. Well, yeah. How do you want to start talking about this? Like, I have some notes. There's definitely some things I'm interested in with this movie. Like, what do you want to?
Well, I did a little bit of research on some of the background of the film that I didn't know. First of all, I wasn't aware that Sean Penn dated Springsteen's sister.
Oh, the lady who was in Sleepaway Camp?
I guess.
2 and 3, the actress?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And supposedly Springsteen wasn't really that into Sean Penn. I thought he was kind of a cocky jerk and didn't like him dating his sister. And one drunken night, like 10 years before this film was made, Sean Penn was like, I'm going to make a movie out of Highway Patrolman. Whatever. And Springsteen was like, sure, Sean, whatever. And then basically when the film was done, he showed the film to Springsteen, and that's when Springsteen agreed to let him put the credit. This film was based upon the song Highway Patrolman by Bruce Springsteen. So Penn made the film without knowing whether or not Springsteen would approve, which is definitely a bit of a high wire act.
I mean, he could probably legally get away with it, right? Because you're just kind of doing an interpretation of a song. So like if Springsteen said, no, fuck you, your movie's garbage, the movie could still exist, right? Like even though
he just couldn't put the
names.
He just couldn't put the credit on.
Yeah.
So,
an interesting choice to not include the song at all.
I guess
that makes sense because the movie is the song.
Yeah, and
you're in the song.
Yeah, that was one of the things that struck me because I had heard that he was going to make the movie based upon this, and I was looking forward to it. And then when he made the choice not to include the song, I just thought that was awesome. Very bold, very confident, just had the right choice. Also, kind of weird, but considering Sean Penn's politics, Steve Bannon was an executive producer on this film.
Well, I saw that credit and I was like, aha, somebody named Steve Bannon produced it. Wonder what Sean Penn thinks. Then I looked it up. I was like, oh, it actually is Steve Bannon. Very weird.
What is it with so
there's rules don't apply.
Yeah, Warren Beatty's working with Stephen Mnuchin, Sean Penn's working with Steve Bannon. Makes me think their commitment to their left-wing politics might be
well, and these are the most left-wing guys too.
Yeah,
dealing with the most not left-wing,
the most right-wing guys.
It's just really amusing. Yeah, unbelievable. But and I guess there's a quote somewhere from Sean Penn just saying yeah, he was an asshole. He wasn't great to work with. As to be expected.
I'm sure if you talk to Steve Bannon, he's like, Sean Penn was an asshole. He wasn't great. These guys don't get along. And this is our second film with a score from Jack Nitzsche, who did the score for The Hotspot.
Oh, so a Hopper connection there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Didn't put that together, but yes, it is. Okay, so let's start by talking about the cast, because I feel like this, in true Cassavetes style, this film is really all about the cast. And,
Yeah.
I mean, the story, yeah, but it's really a vehicle for some tremendous acting, which makes sense. That's an area that Sean Penn can, that's his great skill. So of course he brings that skill to his directing. Yeah. So let's start by talking about some of the supporting characters in the film. To me, the real standouts was casting Sandy Denny and Charles Bronson as Joe and Frank's parents. Yeah. Two tremendous performances. And I was reading, I guess there was a very long scene with Sandy Denny with Frank and Joe visiting her at her deathbed. And she had cancer at the time, and everyone knew it was like this really big emotional scene. But then Sean Penn, one of the things that he was struggling with in making the film was he found Viggo and he thought he was great for the role. They really wanted a movie star, for that role, but Sean Penn made what I think is a very smart, a great choice in choosing Viggo, but he felt that Viggo's natural kindness was coming through too much in the character. So he was doing all these different things to try and make him less sympathetic, including not showing up to his mother's deathbed. So they had to cut that scene. But I sure hope if there's ever a Blu-ray release of this, that Sandy Denny scene gets put on it, because there's an interview with Viggo where he's just talking about how it was like she was just on such a totally different level than all the rest of them, which, considering the level that all those people are acting at, you can see it in the few scenes she has. She's just a raw, as she always has been, just a raw, emotional, like seemingly losing control kind of actor, but clearly in control, was a professional in control. But going back all the way to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, that's what she does, is this just wonderfully raw kind of performance style. Yeah, it was amazing. Do you have any thoughts about her performance?
I agree that it's like she's in the movie for just a brief flash. It feels like she's barely in it, but it's just what she brings is so great. And I didn't know she was in this movie, so when I saw her face, I was like, oh shit, this is great. Just like, who else is casting her in their indie film in the early 90s? Nobody, as far as I know. So it's just like, and it's just part of that. I think Penn really trying to tap into this sort of new Hollywood thing with this movie, and end up using some of these actors from that era.
And I'm really curious because you're a big Bronson fan, bigger Bronson fan than me probably. And Charles Bronson is in this, and I'm so curious to know what you make of his performance.
It's just so good. Like, it is a total shame that he didn't get some sort of like Oscar nomination for it. Like, it's a small role, but like this is like coming off of like a decade where he was just doing schlock for like Canon Films, where it's just like all the Death Wish sequels and like movies that are basically rip-offs of Death Wish, which is him shooting people for like 10 plus years. And you just forget that, like, and he's not terrible in those movies. He's great in those movies. He's very good at them. But you just like this is him like really being able to, like, I don't know, just like really act. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way that he wasn't in the other things, but like there's something about him just playing this kind of sad dad. He doesn't have the iconic mustache here. He's like clean shaven. And it's just so, like with everybody in this movie, there's something so real and raw and vulnerable about him here. And to see him as this like sad old man is really cool.
I want more of that. I would have been such if Charles Bronson alternated between the shoot 'em ups and the tough guy, and then occasionally gave us some of this. Oh, I mean,
yeah.
Like I've never seen Charles Bronson's face light up in a smile. I don't think.
Yeah.
Like he'll smile in a movie, but his face doesn't light up. It gets colder, or but him in the scenes with his kid, with the kid in the movie,
saying the word vegetables, excited, the kid saying vegetables, which I'm sure was unscripted moment, because it's like a baby, and then and we're gonna spoil this movie, so if you haven't seen it, don't listen to this. But like when he calls Joe. The night he kills himself, and all he says to him is like, "Oh, you should fix that tile in your kitchen," is giving him some sort of like advice while he's like, and something's wrong because he's up late at night, just drinking at the table, just looking sad, and then you find out that's the last thing he said to his son before he killed himself. Really good, and again, just like with Sandy Denny, like it's tiny, it's a small role, but it packs so much. And like, I mean, nobody's bad in this movie. This is a movie full of like fantastic performances across the board, as to be expected from a, really, really good actor. Have you ever been directed by an actor? I just wonder, like, what is it that's different, like, from someone who has had that experience on the other side of the camera?
Oh, well,
going
yes.
to the other side,
Yes, yeah. It's a much better experience than when you're being directed by someone who is more of a technician. On the film Far From Home, I remember there was a joke. Mirt Avis, who directed the film, and he's a wonderful director. But he was mostly known for directing videos. He directed a lot of the late 80s, the Joshua Tree era YouTube videos, and a lot of the Tunnel of Love era Springsteen videos. And the joke on the set was that he would be like, "What are those people doing in front of my shot?" They're acting. And sometimes you definitely get that feeling when you're working with someone who is more of a director. And then there are people who are not actors, they're technical directors, but they want to be really good actor directors. And those people can be sometimes those can be the worst, because they don't really know what they're doing, but they think they're being supportive, but they're actually just being sort of manipulative and sort of tone deaf. But yeah, I mean, anytime you're working, you're dealing with you have to find your groove with the director. But when the film I did in Europe with Michel Schotenberg, a film called Averill's Arrival, he had come up as an actor, and that was probably the best experience I ever had on a set. So, yeah.
I just feel like you can tell when watching this movie that, like, Sean Penn, clearly an intense guy, an intense actor, and you can just feel him rubbing off on all these people. Like these people are all great, apart from Sean Penn, but like you can see them trying to match the intensity that he brings to his roles. Like everybody in this movie is really going for it. And I feel like a lot of it must be because he's just a really good director and really good at communicating with these people, kind of the emotions and the beats and the things he wants. And just like, yeah, and Charles Bronson, like, being allowed to do this kind of role is great. I love that he cast him, because like you could see someone else casting like some sad old man, some actor who you like or something, but the idea of taking this guy that we know so well as being this like kind of tough masculine presence in a movie and having him just kind of be this sort of like sad, old man kind of at the end of his life. Really powerful stuff.
Let's look at the the partners of our two leads. We have Valeria Golino playing, I think she's Italian, right?
Correct.
Playing Joe's Mexican wife. You know...
It was a different time, 1991. When that's the magic of the Italian. You know, they can play every type of ethnicity. Should they? I don't know, but you know, it's.
And this was
if Andy Garcia can play Italian in Godfather 3 around the same time. Let's have an Italian play Hispanic. Sure.
It's like a trade. It's a little...
It's a one in, one out deal that... Yeah.
I'm trying to see where this is in... I remember the first time I remember her was showing up in Rain Man.
Oh, that's right. So this would have been a few years after that, and this has got to be around the time she was also in the Hot Shots movie, the first one.
Yeah.
I want to say that was around 90, 91, like...
Yeah, same year.
Where she was sort of like, she was popular. Yeah, at the time, I remember her being in a lot of things. Like she was the it girl.
The it girl. Yes, the sort of the prestige it girl. Mm-hmm. You know, because Rain Man. Yeah, she had some kind of like special quality, and she does have a special quality in this. Like she's so likable, and I think it's funny that her character is smoking pot all the time. and she tries to keep it a secret, even though like David Morse, when he comes home, he's like waiting outside patiently being like, have you hid the evidence yet? It's like he knows, like there's no reason for you to be sneaking around with it just because he's a cop or whatever. Like he doesn't seem to really care. And her dealer is Benicio Del Toro. Is that? No.
Isn't that what he gives her in the when he leaves? He hands her the envelope. Isn't that the pot? Then you see him smoking.
But that's not Benicio Del Toro.
Oh,
is it?
Yeah, isn't it? Or am I just totally thought I saw Benicio Del Toro in this movie and it wasn't him at all?
I didn't notice it as Benicio Del Toro, but let's see this. I want to look at the full credits.
Yeah, Benicio Del Toro as Miguel.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Well, I mean, I saw it being like, oh, and I was expecting him to come back, but I guess he wasn't famous enough yet to to do it. Good, for a moment there, I thought I was racist.
Wow.
So I'm glad that it was Benicio Del Toro. Yeah. Just a little moment, just one moment there where she's, because her job is what she does in her spare time is she teaches people English who speak Spanish. And one of the people that she's teaching who talks back to her in Spanish, and she says, I don't speak Mexican. And then the guy who's picking her up is Benicio Del Toro, and he runs her a little, package of weed.
Wow, I did not pick up on that. How early is that in his career? Is that like...
91, the only thing I would have seen before this with him was he was in that James Bond movie, License to Kill, where he's like the hitman.
He was in an episode of Miami Vice.
Yeah, Miami Vice. So, like, he was kind of playing thugs. Like, this is before... Because, like, the big break for him was Usual Suspects, right? That was the big,
that's 94.
Now we know. So, soon, not quite there yet. But, hey, Sean Penn knew even back then, even for one scene, you put this together, something about this guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, then we get to... I think one of the real heavy hitter performances in this, which is Patricia Arquette, in sort of full on true romance, like dreamily, sort of dreamy, weirdo, romantic. How would you describe? It's not quite manic pixie dream girl, but.
No, I've always loved her, and when I was a younger man, I definitely had a huge crush on her from this era of her career. Like, there's something odd about her because she's really pretty, But then there's something just like strange and off, and it's not the pixie dream girl thing. It's like there's like an innocence to her characters, but her characters are also like not afraid to they're I don't know, like it's hard to kind of explain it. Like they're all the ones that she kind of plays from this era, like from True Romance and this, and where she is just like. Yeah, just like she's the one who'll say sort of what everyone's thinking in the room, or she doesn't really seem to care. But she's not like some rebel. She still comes off as like this really good spirit, this really nice person. And her constant screaming in this movie is amazing. The first time she does it, just it's incredible. Very good screamer.
When she's just smoking pot with Valeria Golino and then wakes up the baby. but yeah, there's this. She's definitely like, and there's the part too when she freaks out because she touches the beard of the bearded woman that they see outside a bar. Yeah,
and she screams and runs into the car. And what's interesting is that like, so she's very loud and screamy when she's having a good time. But when things don't get so good between her and Viggo, she does not get into a screaming match with him. She just kind of gets a little quieter, it feels like, and just kind of gets kind of upset. And one of the most saddest scenes in the movie when he's hurling the peas at her.
Oh, God.
And it's just brutal.
What a great scene. I mean, for the two of them.
We can get to that.
Wow. Wow.
But she does some strange things in this movie, like... wearing an adult diaper and a pacifier on her, standing on her head while Viggo times her, and then once she passes that, then he proposes marriage to her. A very odd thing to do.
Yeah, it's not Mickey and Mallory, but it feels like there is something of that like vibe between these two.
And clearly, like, her parents don't approve. Like, you see, like, a disapproving dad look out the window when she runs up. But she's definitely, like, she is infatuated with the Frank character. And, you know, is definitely, yeah, like, knows that she's in dangerous territory. Because, I mean, you're dating an ex-con Vietnam vet with multiple Nazi tattoos above the neck. So it's
we're introduced like that. Basically, we find out that he was in prison because she sends a letter to Joe, saying that he hit me. My dad called the cops because he hit me, but don't worry, I'm here to take care of him. Which is red flag.
A lot of red flags with this relationship. But for whatever reason, she is, I mean, he's a handsome man, Viggo. We'll talk about that. But he's definitely, like, from the moment you see him, you can tell it's trouble. not a person you'd want to marry. But yeah, Patricia Arquette, really good. And is this, like, one of the first serious things she did, like, post kind of being... in more mainstream stuff? Like, I feel like there was then a long line of great performances from her in the 90s.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Looking at it, 91.
I'm just curious as to where this lies in her, because like I feel like even though I saw her in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, I didn't really get very aware of her until it was True Romance. Was when I was like, oh, who's this lady? Like I was like really. Which was a few years after this, or a year after this.
That's 93, yeah. And then Ed Wood is 94, which also tremendous performance. Flirting with Disaster, 96.
Mm-hmm. Lost Highway in 97. Yeah.
High-Low Country in 98. And then, of course, your favorite, Little Nicky. Bringing Out the Dead is 99, then Little Nicky in 2000, and then Human Nature in 2001, which I think is funny because... when Patricia Arquette touches the bearded lady's beard, and then she goes into the car and she's sort of looking at her face as if she could grow a beard, it made me think that she was doing her, very early work in preparation for Human Nature, which is a film that I definitely want to do on this podcast at some point.
Definitely. Yeah. So good. But I would say if you had asked me in the 90s who my favorite actress is, I would have said Patricia Arquette. Like, I was just, like, into what she was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of stealth. Like, I don't think that people at the time were talking about her as one of the great actors of her generation. She just kept being really good. I remember there was a point where I was like, wait a second, I think Patricia Arquette's been in like 5 or 6 of the best movies of the decade.
Yeah.
So I guess we should talk about Viggo now.
Yeah, I think it's a good lead into Viggo. And this has to be like the first big thing for him, right?
Yes.
Like, because before this, he also was on an episode of Miami Vice, as everyone was. But this has got to be the first starring role, like an unknown at the time. But man, it's just like he, from the beginning, has it. He's so good. He is so good always.
Yeah. This performance is, well, it's just, it wasn't a star-making performance, but it is a star-making performance in a same sort of stealth way. Like, this film did not make Viggo into a star. We would have to wait for
Lord of the Rings.
But it definitely put him on the map.
Yeah. And like he had done a few things before, like looking at his filmography. He was the star of the movie Prison by Rennie Harlin from '87. And then he was in Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. So he's definitely in sort of the horror world. You acted with him, right?
Yeah, in the film Tripwire, I actually introduced him to my agent, who's still his manager. And
very, very cool.
And I remember around that time, when he signed with my agency, he was sent me a nice thank you note and was like, "Hey, you should really check out this venue called the Iguana Cafe," which became sort of my main stomping ground as a songwriter for quite a while, and introduced me to some amazing artists. And I remember Viggo used to read poetry there. And at the time he was shooting this film, he would send letters of poetry back to a guy named Duke McVinney, a songwriter that we all knew. And Duke would turn his poems into these wild sort of musical jazz explorations. And so, yeah, it was definitely a time where he was a really interesting artist, aside from being just an actor, and so there was this sense of like something exciting was happening in Nebraska when he was off making this film, and we were getting little missives from them about basically about how bored he was. But it sure doesn't seem like it, because man, he kills his performance. He's Frankie ain't no good. I mean,
no. Well, it's like, I feel like it's definitely like, it is an unlikable character in terms of just like, in real life you wouldn't want to ever meet or hang out with a person with, an SS tattoo on their neck, or who's that kind of violent, like out of nowhere violent. But there is a humanity that Viggo brings to it, and I think even though Sean Penn tried to, I think, cut out a lot of him being nice coming through, he still can't help but kind of like Viggo, because it's him. Like, he's not totally evil, Like, I think I've seen this character in other movies before where they are portrayed as either like a total idiot, and they're not listening to the good brother and they're just a dummy, or they are just really, really bad and you fucking hate them and you can't wait for them to die in the end or explode, But this, it's like, you definitely like feel for him, because his character is definitely got some PTSD going on here, and yeah, just, and there's an interesting part in the movie when David Morse, whom we haven't talked to quite yet, asks Charles Bronson's dad, like, where does he get it from? Like, why is he this way? Because, like, clearly, like, we're not like that. So what is this? This wild guy that's our relative. Like, how did this happen? Because even before the war, he was known for running around and just causing mischief, you know. And he doesn't stop with this movie. And those are my favorite parts of the movie with him, is like him kind of going off and just causing problems for no reason. Like that whole sequence when he steals that car from that luau, and destroys it. It kind of reminds me of those kind of characters, like that somebody. It just feels like that kind of like you're still a teenager. You're still like just up to mischief for no reason other than this is what you do. This is like, or this is what amuses you when you're bored, or this is all you know how to do is just like making everybody's lives difficult.
Well, let's dig into this a little bit, because there is like so he's got the swastika on his neck where everyone can see it. He's walking around a lot with his shirt off in the middle of town, and everyone still kind of is okay with him. So it's, and then Charles Bronson has this wonderful scene where he apologizes to Joe. He's like, you know, I gave you a really hard time about marrying a Mexican, and I was so wrong. I was just so wrong. Oh God, I love that scene. That's why I think that was probably my favorite scene for Bronson. And then when we see his childhood room, there's a point where Patricia Arquette comes into his childhood room and there's a Confederate flag there.
Yeah.
And so the history of racism is baked into not just Viggo, but this whole town and all of these people who are not interrupting his racism at all. And it seemed to be like they'd be fine with it if he just stopped beating up on white people. He could probably get away with everything else. And I was reading this article called The Dark History of the Indian Runner. It came out pretty recently, so I guess there is some sort of critical reclamation of this film going on. But Sean Penn talks about how the whole use of the Indian runner, the Native American character who shows up sort of like out of the Doors movie, like a magical Indian trope. Yeah. And the way what Penn said was that he sees the settler history of the white people of that county and that town as being the cause, or the sorry, there's huge noise going on out in Hollywood Boulevard. That he sees that history of the white settler culture, that karma is part of the justification for why Frankie is the way Frankie is. Whether that's that it's like the sins of the father will be visited upon the son, or that he is the karma, or that just something. Because when I watched it in 91, I was not as sophisticated about this stuff as I think I am now. And I pointedly said, as I think I am now, because I'm sure in 10 years I'll realize how unsophisticated I am now. But watching it this time, I definitely had some alarm bells go off about the sort of tokenizing of Native Americans as just a symbol to explain white people. And if you watch it, you might have a similar reaction. But I will take Sean Penn at his word that it's an intentional challenge to the history of genocide in this country, as opposed to just what it looks like on the face, which is a white director using Native American iconography and imagery to, I don't know, to make his own statement.
Which was certainly popular in the 90s.
Right.
That's the thing that Oliver Stone did it more than once. And there is a part in this movie where Joe finds a arrowhead in the ground. So there's definitely not just the symbol of the actual Native American walking around, but there's little other things sprinkled throughout. I had some Eastern Promises flashback, seeing Viggo naked, fully naked, covered in tattoos.
Early on, like Viggo, just the guy likes to, I don't want to say that he likes to whip out his dick, but I will say that he definitely is an actor who is unafraid and willing to, add some equality to the objectification of the human form.
And then that movie too is also about brothers, right? Isn't Viggo and Vincent Cassel, aren't they sort of brothers, and one's wilder than the other? And I feel like there's a little bit of a mirroring thing going on, something there. But yeah, his performance in this movie, it's just as to be expected, just incredible. He's just so good. Electric. This should have catapulted him into you're one of the great actors, but it still took him a while to kind of work through. He was still good in things. He's in, bigger movies after this. He shows up in Crimson Tide and Carlito's Way with Sean Penn.
G.I. Jane.
G.I. Jane, but it wasn't until Lord of the Rings when he was a superstar, and thankfully it didn't ruin him. He kept giving great performances even after he broke big, especially in all those Cronenberg movies where I think he's just brilliant in all of them. I think that's one of the best working relationships between an actor and a director ever.
Yeah.
And there's just a good amount of trust from Sean Penn to kind of have your movie, because the movie kind of all hinges on his performance, his character, and then the relationship between him and his brother, and to give it to an unknown for the most part was just faith. And I wonder what it was he saw or where he saw him that clicked that he was the guy. Because I would say that if Sean Penn was interested in still acting, I could see this being the role that he would have given himself.
Yeah, totally.
This is very much the Sean Penn type character, the unruly, the guy that you're scared to, because he's going to punch you out of nowhere because he's emotionally
it's kind of
crippled.
It reminds me of the role he played in, what's the De Palma Vietnam film with Michael J. Fox?
Casualties of War.
Casualties of War. It's that guy. So it's tremendous performance, and I read that Sean Penn saw, just like the look of him, thought he had a real angular quality to him that made him just stand out. And then he and the producers went to visit him on the set of Young Guns 2 that he was acting on, to offer him the role. And good job, Sean Penn, finding one of the great actors of our generation. Really, between you and me, Sean, we are responsible for Viggo. So, high five, buddy. High five.
You got him the manager. You got him the role. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about David Morse. One of the, I'd say he is an actor the world is wrong about.
Very much so. I feel he is so underrated.
Yeah.
And but at the time of this movie, he was coming off the hit show. He was one of the main people in St. Elsewhere. And that was sort of the reason why anyone would know him at all, because he was in America's Homes week after week. And this is sort of before he was really, because he shows up in so many movies in the 90s. And he's just one of those guys that I think a lot of people don't know his name. And they're like, oh, that guy. in so many things, and he's always so good and so intense. And he's also like Sean Bean. You never know whether he's going to be the real bad guy or the real good guy.
Because he has such, that's crazy because his vibe is so, like, I would say that just compassion and feeling is what you just radiates off this guy. And then when he plays the heavies, it's so great. It's so awesome.
Well, because he still has that kind of, like, either it's a phony compassion or whatever. Like, this is where the people get in trouble, is they trust him, and then it turns out he's a piece of shit. like in Dancer in the Dark, like, where you're just like, is he going to be a good David Morse in this, or is he going to betray everybody? And he's just so good, and like, I think he definitely, like, he just has that kind of everyman quality in the way of, like, he just kind of looks like everybody's dad. Like, he has that. He kind of reminds me of Michael Moriarty a little bit, like what Michael Moriarty did in the 80s, like, when he was in movies where he was sort of like,
yeah, but Moriarty always comes off as a little bit creepy.
Yeah, so does David Morse, I think.
Really?
There's something, I just, like, watching this movie, I'm still like, is he going to do something bad? Like, I just don't. Because you never know with Morse. You never know whether he's going to be the good guy or the bad guy. He's like, there's something sneaky about him that, like, he's always seems helpful and seems like he's going to be a good guy, but then when he isn't, we're all fucked. Then you have 12 Monkeys where he's spreading the disease everywhere, So it's, you can never, maybe it's because of all the movies after this of him being like the secret bad guy. It made me like watching it wondering. I think the first note I wrote was, Morse, good guy? ? And in a way, he isn't great in this movie because he helps his brother kind of keep getting away with being shitty and awful to people. And he's like, he is the, he's using his power as a cop to let this guy get away with it. After he like bashes a guy's face in a bar or whatever, like he still is letting him, get a pass in a way.
Yeah.
Which is in the song, in the original Spring. Like, that's what this song is about.
Man turns his back on his family. That man just ain't no good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Man helps a guy with the swastika keep beating up on people.
Beat up people.
Maybe that guy ain't no good.
Maybe that guy ain't no good either, yeah. And there's just so many good scenes. Like, he's such a good reactor in this movie. Like, there's people throwing stuff at him, figuratively and literally. And it's just him kind of, and like, it's just like the intent. It's like Viggo is instantly intense in this movie, whereas David Morse, it's like a slow percolating, sort of like simmering pot, And there's just so many good scenes with him in this. Like, he's just like, he's just an incredible actor. I love him so much. And like the big scene with him and Viggo in the bar when he cuts his hand open, and like that whole moment, which is just so, to me, that's like the Cassavetes kind of there. Like, it's just like this very emotional, it's just actors just like in a room, just talking, and just like the emotions kind of going up and down, and just the intensity in that whole scene. And like, he goes from concern to anger to sadness. Like, he just like goes through the whole range of everything in that scene. It's just so good. And
I gotta say something, and just Morse is a lesson in a kind of acting that I love, which is he's totally invested, he's totally present, but the guy, I just feel like he never forces anything. There's no effort. Or if there is effort, it seems effortless. He always seems like he's speaking just to whoever he's with in the scene. There's no sense of emoting or pushing. And I think that's probably why he works so much, because Yeah.
He feels so real. Like, he feels like you forget when you're watching him in everything that he's an actor, that he is acting, because it just feels so natural and just so like, just feels like, oh, this guy just walked into this room and he's interacting with these actors, but it's like, no, he's an actor. Mm-hmm. He's just, there's something super, super grounded about him in everything, even when he's in ridiculous, crazy movies like as a corrupt cop chasing Bruce Willis around or whatever. There's something just so, I mean, because he doesn't look like the person you would think was an actor. Like, he just looks like a guy that you would deal with in life. You know, right. Like, compared to Viggo, who looks like this chiseled, Adonis, and like everybody else, like even Charles Bronson, like everyone, all the other people in this movie have this sort of movie star quality, and I think that's sort of why David Morse has been able to slip by for decade after decade and not really get the huge recognition, because he's just sort of so natural and believable. You just kind of don't think of him as being an actor in a weird way, even though you're watching him in a movie in front of you and that's all you know him from. There's just something about that. Like, he's never playing it too big. It's just like all very, like, he's so good. Like, I love him in Treme.
Oh, I was just thinking about that. He's fantastic.
So good in that show. Also playing a cop.
Who looks the other way sometimes.
Yeah, I think cops may do that often with the people that they know. Yeah, he's just, I hope that someday he'll, like, I don't know, I just feel like he'll be one of those actors where he'll pass away and the obit will list all the great things he did and everyone will be like, oh yeah, he was great. And it's like, but we should recognize him now while he's around, that he's really, really good.
Yeah.
That scene where he's washing his cop car and that weird lady's just following him around
I love that scene.
the car.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the film. It's
and like, it's
are you
sort
afraid
of
of me?
almost like,
are you afraid of me?
It's almost like a.
Go on.
Well, it's like a comic relief or something, because she's this odd, like, must be not an actor, just like a real person in that town, like kind of cross-eyed, sort of out of time.
For a second, do you feel like that might be Bruce McCullough?
Or I was thinking, like, it feels like an Amy Sedaris character, like it feels like a Strangers with Candy thing going on here, but like it's her just following him around, asking him about some hippies, I guess, that are camping out on her farmland or something, from what I gauge. Like, that's what she's complaining about. But she's also just like, because his parents had just died, and so she's just like, I'll give you a shoulder to cry on, like, I'll make you dinner. And it's literally like her like chasing him around this car, and him just looking like he's trying to ignore her, but he can't. And then she eventually was like, are you afraid of me? That scene is great, because that scene is not, to me, that's a scene most people would put on the cutting room floor, or just like, why would you even write that? But it definitely shows like Joe's patience with everybody and everything, that he's like so like calm and collected with dealing with all these people all the time in this movie, until he can't anymore. But
and it's all one shot, so you gotta, I gotta think that it's just like Sean Penn saw this woman and had this idea. I was like, what if we let's just try this. I get a sense like that is, I mean, that's kind of the actor director thing. It's like, let's just try a little improv scene. So you just keep talking to him, and Joe, you just keep moving around and trying to wash this car.
Oh, I guess this is a good transition to talk about Sean Penn as a director and the movie as a whole here. So impressed, because usually when you see movies by an actor, especially in this era, in the 90s, in the early aughts, like kind of the indie boom, they definitely feel less cinematic. They feel a little stagey. They feel like they're based on a play or something. Like, it's like, I feel like there was a lot of those movies where, oh, it's directed by so-and-so, an actor, and it's all about the actors, and it doesn't quite click. Like, or they got better as a director as they went on. But this movie, it's so well done. Like, the mood and the atmosphere, just like how sad and real and raw everything feels. Like, he really did capture the mood of the Springsteen song in film form, and the album of Nebraska as a whole. Like, that kind of ghosty feeling that you get when you listen to that album, which is an incredible album. I feel this movie really gives you the feeling of that without playing a single song from from the album. It could have very easily been him just going through every track in Nebraska, not just Highway Patrolman, but like everything, and trying to like make the mood through this familiar music. But the fact that there isn't any, but he just gets that. There's just something about this empty, dying town. You know, it's just like the way the streets look and the way he casting all these sort of real looking, kind of weathered, kind of worn out people as the extras, like the people in the apartment where Viggo lives at a hotel or whatever, like the old man who laughs when Viggo flips the lady's shirt up over her head and he's just smoking and laughing, and you're like, I believe that guy really lives there. Maybe he's an actor, but like there's something very he got it right making this movie. From
that
really
opening shot.
The opening shot. It's great. It makes me very excited to watch all the other movies of his, because I really just never, I don't know why I never saw this movie or thought about, like, maybe because Sean Penn is a director, I was like, I don't know, maybe that's good, I don't know, but it's totally good. It's he learned from who, I don't know which director.
I think from Hal. I mean, he credits Hal Ashby and John Cassavetes, and I feel both of those influences on it. Like the vibe is, I feel like cinematically he's doing Ashby, and directorially for the actors he's doing Cassavetes, but he's doing his own. But he's doing his own thing. Like, it doesn't feel, if he didn't say that, I wouldn't think, oh, this feels like Hal Ashby or this feels like John Cassavetes. But since he very openly credits those, I can see that it's his version of that. Like, I don't know, just like that, again, that opening scene, it's this car chase, but the way it looks and feels has that sort of Ashby soft vibe to it.
Yeah. And it, like the way the film looks, it almost looks like Super 16 or something. Like it kind of gives it that indie vibe. Like, this isn't some slick Hollywood movie. Like, it has that kind of rough around the edges feel to it, but not in like the handheld Cassavetes way. Like you said, it's more like Hal Ashby. It's more has that like so many people try to emulate the cinema of the 70s, and what he does here is he just understands what made those movies great and makes a movie sort of in the spirit of the 70s, as opposed to trying to make it look like or match exactly like a 70s movie, which I think is why it's effective. It would have been maybe too gimmicky if he went full into, even though this takes place in that time in the late 60s, early 70s. So
So are there, we've kind of talked through the whole film. Are there any particular scenes or parts of the film that you feel like we should give some extra attention to?
I feel sorry for Dennis Hopper's character to be the bartender in this town. And like, you're going to have to deal with something breaking every time, every day. And it's funny because I assumed that Dennis Hopper was going to have a bigger role in this movie, you know, because his name is kind of high up on the credits. And he had worked as a director with Sean Penn a few years earlier on Colors, and he shows up kind of more closer to the end of the movie. It's not really in the first half. I feel like it's in the second half that his character shows up, and he's just and he's really weird in that moment. The moment we talked about between the two brothers, with he's like has like a nervous laugh, like when David Morse is sort of first in there, questioning Viggo as to why are you not by the side of your pregnant wife who's about to give birth, and Dennis Hopper's just kind of in the corner like laughing, kind of like a little weirdo. And then when shit gets more emotional, when he realizes like, oh no, these people are gonna fight, then he excuses himself to go to the bathroom. But
what does he say? Wait, I have to visit my throne or something. I don't know.
I think it's visit the throne. And it's just good. It was just a nice little Dennis Hopper weird moment. And I wonder, Yeah, if he because of the same composer from the Hotspot, I wonder if he helped in any way, being an indie filmmaker himself, helped with any advice to Sean Penn while making this movie or before making this movie. Also actor turned director. So, but yeah, those little moments with Hopper, really enjoyed that.
And at the end, we have this intercut sort of, not quite like the end of The Godfather, but the same kind of vibe, where we're intercutting between the birth of Viggo's child with Patricia Arquette alone there, and then Viggo's murderous rampage that basically ruins any possibility for him to be a father to that kid. And in that scene, it's a very graphic murder scene, but it's maybe even a more graphic birth scene. We're actually seeing a birth in real time during this. And I read about it. There was a Nebraska couple that gave Sean Penn the permission to film their birth, so that like you see the baby actually coming out of the mother, and it's again more of that sort of Cassavetes kind of realism. And then we come to the finale of the movie, and I thought it nails the end. Like there's the final chase where just like out of the song, he chases him to the state line, and then there's this basically a mirror of the first scene, except in this one, Frankie isn't shooting at Joe and Joe doesn't kill him, but he pulls over, he gets out, we see him, Viggo sees him as a kid. And this is one of the things that is replaying throughout the movie is that Joe is seeing Viggo as this kid and not as the bad man that he is. It's the good kid that he was. And it ends on this line, which I just think is so wonderful in terms of, I don't know, tying the bow on the movie and the song. So the line is, he turned his back on it. Joe is saying in voiceover about Frankie, he turned his back on himself and his family. I went home that night. I kissed my wife and my child. I worked my garden. Life is good. My brother Frank, ... And if you know the song, you know what the line is. My brother Frank, he ain't no good. But the movie doesn't give you that line. It gives you the setup, which I think when I saw that the first time, that's when I just completely surrendered to the film. Like, oh yeah, that's so wonderful. That is, you don't put the song in, but you end on the song's line. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's is this the best based on a song movie?
I gotta think so.
There's the You, Me, and Dupree
Harper Valley PTA. Billy Joe McAllister jumped off the Tallahassee Bridge.
Yeah,
I think these are both. This is better than that.
The Clint Eastwood movie Pink Cadillac, was that based on the Springsteen song, or did he write the song for the movie?
I don't think. I just think it's.
Or they just used it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, like it's just such a cool idea to be like, here's this 3-minute song, and I'm going to take the characters, take the feel, the tone of this song, and make a 100-minute movie based on that, and do it well, and do it justice, and do a great job. Like, I wonder what it was like being Springsteen watching this movie.
Well, he liked it. He thought he did a great job. I wish more people made movies based upon They Might Be Giants songs.
No one's done that yet. So.
Yeah.
Which one would you?
I don't know. Right now, because of this, I'm thinking of Your Racist Friend.
Make that into a drama.
Anna Ang. I think Anna Ang could be a good, just like a movie about Anna Ang.
Hotel detective. You can do a movie about a lady being a hotel detective.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, they would match. They have to match the tone of the song, so the movie would have to be really quirky and feel like,
Yeah, that's why I think Anna Ang might be good, because just a movie all about this Anna Ang character and a guy who's obsessed with her, because they are getting older and they still haven't walked in the glow of each other's majestic splendor. Oh, well. Okay, well, The Indian Runner. It's wait, can we go back for a second? What else did people at your work say about, I don't understand how people who like movies could be hostile to this film.
It's just a lot of that it's boring, that nothing happens. It's just really slow. There was a lot of comments of like, oh, well, you won't have trouble sleeping if you watch it tonight because that movie's like so slow and boring. And, well, I chose not to watch it at like midnight. It's it's a drama that I know would be slow and deliberate, and so I woke up and watched it instead. And I would never say I was bored watching this movie because I'm just captivated by the. I think a lot of people, even film people, I think people have a hard time with movies where it's just about people and it's like real. Like this movie so much like real life. Like it really feels like you're dropped into real life, and it's difficult people. And like this, like even though the plot of this, you could say, is very similar to like Mean Streets, which everybody loves, but because it has the Scorsese flair of camera trickery and Rolling Stone soundtrack, it's more fun. And this movie, there's no one would describe this movie as fun. The Indian Runner is not a fun movie. And I think you have to maybe be in the right frame of mind or right mood to sit through a not fun movie about difficult people, that feels real. Yeah, I mean, it took me 30 years to watch this movie because I kind of knew it wasn't going to be any fun. I was like, this looks, which is also why I haven't seen The Crossing Guard or The Pledge. I'm like, these movies look very serious, and that Sean Penn's a very serious, almost humorless man. Like, this is going to not be a good time, so I need to be in the right place to watch.
I'll be honest, I didn't love The Crossing Guard or The Pledge for similar reasons. For similar,
they're too serious, too bleak.
Too bleak for me, yeah. The reason this works is because the performances are so phenomenal. The actors who are like in those movies, I feel like Nicholson is really underplaying, which it works for the role, for the kind of film that they're making, but. No, there's something. It's different, but when I think about this film, I also think about Buffalo 66. I think of Indian Runner.
Yeah, me too. It has that, like, you're making a 70s movie in the 90s, but you're not. But it doesn't feel stupid, and it's because you got the spirit of it. And there's moments too where Viggo kind of feels like Vincent Gallo in a way. I think it's because of that chin, like the pointy face, but also just the intensity, like that you can just have out of nowhere, that kind of like violent, intensity come out, much like Vincent Gallo has in Buffalo 66. Worth noting, David Morse shows up again in The Crossing Guard, so clearly him and Penn had a really good working relationship. Yeah. And did you see Into the Wild?
I did not. I should see it.
To me, that looks kind of not as interesting. It looks definitely a little more Oscar-y than these kind of weird little movies. The book's a great book. I just
worry about that guy. He's not...
Sean Penn, or the guy that Out of the Wild is about?
The guy that the movie's about. I'm worried about him. He's... I don't think.
You don't have to worry about him anymore.
I don't think you should go into the wild. I think it's probably a bad idea.
We've all seen Grizzly Man. Don't go into the wild.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to turn you on to the Indian Runner, and I hope you tell your colleagues at the Austin Film Society
Then they were wrong.
You maybe broaden their cinematic palette.
One last thing that's worth mentioning about this movie, that's an odd trivia thing that I read that's funny that I've never seen before in any movie ever. This won an award. The only award it ever won was the Italian National Syndicate of Film Journalists in 1992. Won the silver ribbon to Pino Locchi for best male dubbing for the voice of Charles Bronson. So whatever the Italian Charles Bronson sounds like wowed them at the Italian National Syndicate of Film Journalists. I hope he stares at this award above his mantle every morning and, thanks his life.
Well, Bronson, he was a big international star.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe that has to do, that might be an Italy Bronson love thing.
Yeah, there's a few lookalike actors. Like there's some guy that I think I don't remember what country he's from. He may even be Asian, but he looks like Charles Bronson and he makes his own movies as like a Charles Bronson. When I was in Japan, I was in Tokyo and I had a nice big mustache at the time. And a homeless man came up to me and started pointing at me and yelling, "Charles Bronson, Charles Bronson," and like playing with his face like it was my mustache. And I think he was very impressed that I had a mustache like Charles Bronson. There was a time when he was like the guy that all over the world loved. Like he was like kind of what Liam Neeson is right now, or Jason Statham. That's like dads around the globe loved seeing Charles Bronson, like shoot people in the face.
Yeah.
Whether it was in a Western or a Death Wish movie, that was like the tough guy. Like he was, that like if it wasn't him, it was Lee Marvin or Clint Eastwood. But it's like that was sort of the thing. And
what's your favorite Bronson?
God, he's really good. The Mechanic is great. He's really good in that movie. I think that movie's fantastic.
Is Jan Michael Vincent in that one?
Yeah, Jan Michael Vincent is the young upstart in that. I mean, he's great in Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah, that's
another non-mustachioed role. And his performance in the first Death Wish is really, really good. Like, politics aside of that movie, but like he is like when he is breaking down in that movie, he is so good. Hard Times is great. I love him, and I love that movie, the Walter Hill movie about boxing. But yeah, he's just like there's something about him that's really likable. He's a likable man. And I like all the silly ones too. Like I love Death Wish 3 is so ridiculous, and and like 10 to Midnight. Yeah, like all the 80s schlock.
You ever see White Buffalo?
Have I seen White Buffalo? I don't know if I have. No, I haven't. Mr. Majestic is really good. Him doing Elmore Leonard.
Yeah.
Like, that's a great movie. Like he's always good. Like, he, like Clint, can be in some ridiculous movies or some problematic movies, but they're never phoning it in. Maybe they are. They're just that charismatic and good that just like you just can't take your eyes off them in anything. But I'm really, really glad that he got to do the Indian Runner kind of at the end there. That it wasn't just Death Wish 5 or that he was able to be like, no, I'm an actor. I'm a real actor. And I guess he went out of
pretty good impression there.
He went out of retirement. Like he would never tour with movies anymore, but I guess he actually went on the press junket with Sean Penn for this because he liked it so much. And like he was like going to con and things when he had kind of stopped doing that for like over a decade, I think. So that's cool.
This wasn't his last film. He did,
but it's his last
real
last theatrical film, because I think after this is like The Family of Cops Part 1 through 3 and yeah. which aren't bad. They're not terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that you find him to be likable. I never found Bronson to be likable. I've definitely liked him in some movies. I definitely Once Upon a Time in the West, absolutely. The Great Escape.
Oh yeah,
I really like him in The Great Escape. Yeah. But once he became a big star, The Dirty Dozen, on his way to becoming a big star, I like him. But once he's got the mustache and the gun, it never. That's why I love this movie so much, because he is so lovable. Like that there's a face that he shows us in this film that I've never seen him show before. Is someone who is, peaceful and thoughtful and has a sense of, joy. Yeah. But that's not to knock him. I mean, he's obviously he's great, and my not finding him likable is a me problem, not a him problem. Just saying that he's not universally. I think that he is not a universally likable guy in the same sense that Tim Conway is.
But man, Death Wish with Tim Conway as
awesome.
Dorf. Dorf Wish. Yeah. No, but I'm really glad to have watched The Indian Runner. Thank you for just finally forcing me to do it. I think that's one of the great things about this show is there's movies that we're both excited to watch. We're like, oh, finally we get to watch the thing that we love. But like, there's movies that I always knew was going to be good, but for whatever reason, I just like sat on it and never did it until you were like, okay, we're covering it. And I was like, here we go. And I was very excited to finally see it.
Radio 8 Ball.
Andras here. When I'm not co-hosting The World is Wrong podcast, I'm hosting and producing the Radio 8 Ball podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random, like picking musical tarot cards. We've hosted musical divinations for people like John C. Reilly, Patricia Arquette, Tig Notaro, and Fred Armisen, and hosted over 200 songwriters, providing the randomly chosen answers from Inara George and Dan Byrne to Mose Allison and Alan Toussaint. That's Radio 8 Ball, all one word. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and download our app from the iTunes App Store. Dear listener, if you are just discovering our podcast, you can find all of our episodes on our website at theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You can also write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com or follow us on Instagram at theworldiswrongpodcast. And now, back to the show. So, Brian, you ever seen The Boss live?
No.
Oh.
I've always wanted to. I've always heard that it's like the most amazing thing. It's just like the cheapest tickets are still way out of my price range. So I think, just the most die. The thing is, I am a diehard fan, but just I'm not a one with money. Like I will buy I have many live albums of his. It's like I usually don't like live albums at all, but with The Boss, I make an exception. So it's like it would be a dream to someday see him live.
Yeah.
Have you? I mean, you met him once, didn't you?
Yeah, I have seen him play live twice, and I have met him once. Saw him on the 1984 on the Born in the USA tour at the Worcester Centrum, and that was amazing. That was
I bet.
Like it really was. a show that lives up to all the cliches and not in a way like, oh, I'm expecting this. It's sort of like, holy shit, this is really happening. Like there was a point at the end where I'm at the Worcester Centrum and I'm just dancing in the aisles or in my seats and like with all these people I didn't know, just like, you know, while he's doing he's doing like his 50s covers, 60s covers thing. And I remember him doing, what's the song? Now that I can dance, watch me now. I do the bone and maroney, I do mashed potato, and I was just like dancing with just some dude, like just me and some dude, we're just like dancing and shaking our arms in the air, and I was just like, oh, this is really happening. This is what they talked about with the Bruce Springsteen concert, and and I brought that up to him when I did meet him. Not many years later. It seemed like many because that was in high school, and like 5 years later I was in LA and I played this really, really, I don't know if have I told the story on the show before?
You have not.
Oh, okay. Well, so I'll tell it now. So I was playing I knew this band called Mary's Danish, which was a sort of cool, sort of hip LA band. They were part of the Red Hot Chili Peppers scene with other bands like Thelonious Monster, and I knew them because one of the singers in the band was the daughter of a friend of my mother's from high school. So when I moved out to LA, she was like, "Oh, you should meet her because she's in a band, and you know she's a little bit older than you, and whatever." I'm sure she just wanted me to have some connections here to family or people who knew me. And we became friends, and then they had me opening shows for them, and they got me in with their manager, and their manager booked me for this show. Like I would open a lot of shows for them, but for this thing, this was this Amnesty International benefit, and they told me that I was opening, but I wasn't really opening. I was playing in this little side bar room, and there was no PA system. And there was music, like dance club music playing, not like dance club music of the 80s, not like dance club music now, but still like not really conducive to playing music. And I had invited a few friends to come out, and it was not a great show. And what made it the worst was that my, quote, manager was sitting. He did come out to watch my show, but he sat in the front row talking with this woman while I was playing the whole time. And my friends saw this, and it was just all seemed very embarrassing and annoying. And I felt dejected, and I wasn't even going to stick around for the Mary's Danish show. And we were on our way out, Bruce Springsteen and Patty Sciafla and his producer, Chuck Plotkin, were walking in. And my first reaction was very, oh man! And now not only did I have this awful show, but I missed playing for Springsteen. I could have met him. And I had a friend, one of my friends there. I'll give her name out. Her name was Sandra Boucher, and she had just finished doing the Landmark education program, which is sort of like an outgrowth of EST. And she was very, very positive in like creating possibilities, and she's like, no, this is not going to be a bad story for you. You're going to go in there and you're going to play a song for Bruce Springsteen. I was like, oh, I am? I was like, yeah. And like by the end, she kind of got me all jazzed up, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And so I went inside to the place. I had my guitar over my back, and I saw that Bruce Springsteen was at the bar. He was buying drink. Like, I don't know why he's going to the bar to buy drinks for Patty and Chuck, and why Chuck isn't doing that. But hey, that's Bruce Springsteen. He's a real working class guy. Anyway, so, and he's wearing like a leather jacket and jeans. He's looking like, kind of crusty Bruce Springsteen. And I walk up to stand next to him at the bar, and the bartender sort of gives me this scared look of like, you're not going to talk to him, are you? I was like, yes, I am. And I was like, excuse me, Mr. Springsteen. I got to get my voice several octaves higher. Excuse me, Mr. Springsteen. I play, and he's like, oh, what is it, kid? And I was like, well, I played here, I'm so bummed. I'm a huge fan of yours. I love all your music, and I can't believe that I had the opportunity to maybe play a song for you, and you just arrived and I just finished. And he's like, well, you got a tape? I was like, yeah, well, I do. I actually have a demo tape right here. But I know, the story is I didn't say the story is. I know you made it by just walking into an office and playing for someone. I'm not saying it's going to make it for me, but just to actually get to play a song for you would mean so much. And he's like, I don't know how he put up with me. He's like, it's kind of loud here. I was like, well, we could go right backstage because I'm part of the show. We go right backstage. I can play you backstage. And he was like, all right. And I was like, so we walk backstage and I play him one song and he's grinning at it and he's just staring at my hands and making the smile. And I finish it. And like my friends are there. Now there's a little crowd gathering because it's Bruce Springsteen. And someone's taking pictures. Somewhere there are pictures of this. I don't know if I'll ever find them. If you're listening and you know where they are, give me a call. But so I finished playing the song. He's like, oh, man, that's great. You got any more? It's like, got any more? Are you kidding me? So I played him another one. And he was like very encouraging. By then, the manager who'd been talking during my show, he's now there. And because I'm with Springsteen. Word's gotten out. Oh, Andras is playing for Springsteen. Oh, no, it's embarrassing. Oh, no, it's okay. It's cool. Whatever. So Springsteen's talking to me. He's like, so what are you doing for the kid? And I was like, I said, oh, let's see how this goes. He's like, well, we're recording a demo and we're playing shows. And he's like, no. What are you doing for the kid? And he's like, well, it's business. And but the whole time I felt like Springsteen was kind of like giving me a lesson of like, you should be asking these questions, and it wrapped up. I gave him the tape, expected to hear him call me for like 3 weeks. Never happened. I don't blame him for it, but it was definitely one of the high points of my, my musical existence to get a chance to play a song for one of the people who really inspired me to. That's
amazing. Yeah. What was the song you played for him? What was the first one? Do you remember?
God, I really wish there's one song called It's Over, which was the second song, and I could go back and find my early demos. It was on it was on the tape that I gave him, but I don't have it right now. I don't have it in front of me. I don't remember exactly. They were not my best songs, but I think I probably delivered them with a lot of passion. Yeah. And I think he got that there was something there, something that was worth his attention. Or maybe he was just being like a really cool, like taking the time. Like that's what I'm saying. He lived up to all the Bruce Springsteen cliches of like man of the people, willing to take time out from his day this far into his career, like 20 years into his career, and not call security, not brush me off, to give me those 10 minutes that I have now told the story, hundreds of times in my life. At the time, I couldn't stop telling it. Now I tell it maybe once a year, if that. So this was the retelling. This was this year's retelling of that story. Oh, good. So thanks for asking me. And I did see him again at the Tacoma Dome a few years later, about a decade later, and the Tacoma Dome was rough. I didn't feel like Bruce Springsteen translated to the Northwest. I feel like the Northwest audiences were just a little bit like arms folded, like, yeah, this is good. This is good.
Yeah, that's kind of how they watch
music. It wasn't like an East Coast, like, just we're going to cut loose because we just got off from the factory kind of vibe.
Boy.
So, yeah, well, I love Bruce Springsteen, though. I mean,
me too. Yeah.
I think we're both big fans. I don't think the world is wrong about him.
No.
No, the world's pretty darn right about him. Except for, well, those tickets are expensive. That's a bummer. But you know what isn't expensive, Brian? Just sending us an email.
It's free.
You value your time. I get it. Your time is valuable. I'm not saying that your time has no value, but if you want to tell us that our time has value, you could give us a little bit of your time. Write us an email. Tell us what you think about this show or other shows, the movies we talk about, the movies we should talk about your experience with Bruce Springsteen. Someone writes
if you're Bruce Springsteen listening to this, what was your experience in that moment with Andras?
Yeah.
I'd
love to know. I'd love to know.
Does he tell that story every?
Do you remember what songs I played, Bruce? I can't remember. All I was doing was looking at you and not believing how amazing my life was in that moment. And if you want to find out how amazing, I keep trying to bring us back to all this crap I have to say. So yes, you can find us on our website. There's a page for every one of these episodes on the website at www.theworldiswrongpodcast.com. And you can find us on a couple of social media platforms. Brian handles the Instagram, and you love it there, don't you?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's pretty sweet. It's a nice little,
It's fine.
Yeah. And I handle the Twitter account at World Is Wrong Pod. The least said about it, the better. Is there a reason why we're not on Facebook, Brian?
At this point, it's just so many of these damn things. They always change. And do we need more than two? We don't hear from anyone on those two. Until we're flooded with comments on both of those, then maybe we can expand out. But I don't need to be friended by some people. I don't need that.
Yeah, you have Facebook pages, but you never check them. You have two Facebook pages.
Do I? Oh.
Yeah.
I have two of them?
Yeah, one with Jerry Lewis's picture and one with your picture.
Oh, yeah. One I don't remember why I abandoned, and then the other one I haven't looked at since 2016. So, yeah, that's just there for the internet graveyard. I'm sure people have messaged me over the last 6-7 years.
Yeah, probably.
Don't care. Don't care. I just decided that I wanted nothing to do with it. I can handle Instagram because it's just pictures, you know?
I'm with you. I lost so many friends through pointless arguments on Facebook. Yeah. And I know how passionate I am about film, and for some reason, I kind of like that there's not a lot of interaction on Twitter. There's, the way that Facebook does engagement, it feels like it just is mixing things up and creating fights, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, because Twitter, which I hate, is still just people just kind of going, bah! And then you can ignore it, or you can repost someone going, bah! And that's it. And Instagram, it's all these here's a picture. You can like the picture or whatever. But Facebook is so much under this guise of these are your friends, and this is what the friend is saying, and here's a conversation. But it's still just, bah! But people act but then people take it to heart, and their internet personas get mixed in with the real ones, and especially when they're trying to talk about the 2016 election or whatever, then people start getting really shitty, whatever side you're on, family, friends, and everyone just hates each other, even though it all is just fucking fantasy anyways. It's not it's the real thing that these people are ever saying. And it's just bullshit. So that's why we're not on Facebook.
Okay. People, in case you were curious, now you know. Did we say what we're doing next week? Because next week we have a heck of an episode.
Oh, boy. We are doing Olsen and Johnson's Hell's a-Poppin', a much as positive and fun as The Indian Runner was not. So I think we can, in 2 weeks, we will go out. This is going to be a fun episode, a fun movie. Hard to track down, but it is on YouTube. So watch Hell's a-Poppin'. It's actually a pretty good quality one on YouTube. I'm very excited. This is a movie that is near and dear to me, that really means a lot, and I'm just pumped to rip it open and go crazy.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this film, but now that I have and I've seen it, I am much better for it, and I encourage you all to check it out. And to remember, please remember, even whether you're Frank or you're Joe, as far as these Cain and Abel brothers of the Indian Runners, whichever one you relate to the most, it doesn't matter. Wherever you are, wherever you go, you're going to find that the world is wrong, and it is probably wrong about you.
I used to know my brother like I used to know I'd always be a farmer. But drifting off in the train that day was a stranger. He looked like a hero. The closeness I felt with my brother was with that rough and tumble kid I knew before high school distractions. And then later my wife and farm occupied our time together. In the last few years before going overseas, Frank had become branded the Hellraiser of town. But he'd come to no good. Maybe leaving so suddenly was the only mercy he knew for the grief he'd caused before. As for my parents, Frankie was right. They would not take it personally.
They say some of the boys coming back are coming back real confused.
Frank left confused.
Well, maybe I'll straighten him out.
So Randall said.
Oh, my God. Now my boy's comparing his mama to a moron.
Wasn't a comparison, huh?
He's a very restless boy, that Frankie. That's what got him into trouble, you know. That's why he left.
I thought maybe he just hated cops.
Joe, don't say that. Listen to your mama.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm AJ.
And we have a podcast called The Director's Wall.
Examining a filmmaker's career, film by film. First up was M. Night Shyamalan, then Francis Ford Coppola. Who's next? Is there anything to this whole auteur theory? Find out on
The Director's Wall.
Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher,